Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, and a big thank you to Jake Kozowski, who left a lovely review over on the Apple Podcast US store. And he said, great tech podcast showcasing innovative products with a fantastic host. He said, I've had the pleasure and privilege of working with Neil on behalf of a few clients, and both had nothing but great things to say. Neil does a great job discussing global industry trends, emerging technology predictions, and more. Wow, my head's beginning to swell here, Jake. And he finishes, he's also a very charismatic host, and his podcast is one to tune into, especially if you're a fan of technology. I'm not sure if my wife would agree with you there about me being charismatic, but I don't get comments like that very often. So, Jake, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it and run with it. Now, I know me and every single podcaster out there begs for ratings and reviews as we all try and make our voices heard and for the algorithms to smile upon us favourably. But the reason we all do it is because it really helps bring more people to the podcast. And more people, more guests, it's good for everyone. And my only gripe with podcasting is especially with Apple Podcasts, it's a bit of a pain how they split all the ratings and reviews by country. So, for example, I think I've got 104 ratings or reviews in the US store and only 23 in the UK. So, if you're in the UK, what's all that about? And if you're listening anywhere else, including the US, please take a look down at whatever device you're listening to this podcast on, and where there's a rating and review, just hit a few buttons and leave a nice review. If you don't like the show and you don't want to leave a positive review because of that, take your hand off that rating button right now. Sir, step away from the rating button. Just send me an email instead, and I'll see if I can improve a few things for you and add a few things into this podcast based on your feedback, because that's how it works on here. I'll talk about my opinions in tech, the guests will bring theirs, and then at the end of it all, I ask you to bring your insights and your expertise on here too. But back to today's episode. Now, those of you that know your tech history will know that LogMeIn acquired a company called LastPass in October 2015. I think it was for around $125 million. And LastPass is a freemium password manager that stores encrypted passwords online. And the standard version of LastPass comes with a web interface, but also includes plugins for various web browsers and apps for many smartphones. But I'm going to be honest with you, that's just scratching the surface of what they do there. And I know it's so much bigger than passwords. And I don't like pigeonholing things in, oh, well, that's a password thing, because this is so much more than that. So I wanted to find out about the kind of problems that they're solving. So on today's podcast, I invited Dan DeMichael, and he's VP of Product Management, Identity Access Management at LogMeIn. And we're going to be addressing the growing cyber threats to the SMB market, especially in today's changing workplace with bring your own devices and remote work and so much more. For example, did you know that Verizon's 2019 data breach investigations reported that 43% of small businesses fall victim to data breaches, and many SMBs don't have the resources to implement robust security programs, let alone user-friendly programs that make it easier for employees to comply. And we're also going to discuss how small businesses can build their programs to meet the needs of today's workforce. And all that begins with identity management strategy. But enough from me. Buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to Boston so we can speak with Dan DeMichael, VP of Product Management and Identity Access Management at LogMeIn. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Dan DeMichael. I'm the Vice President of Product for the Identity Access Management Group within LogMeIn. That includes a host of our security products, namely LastPass, but then also some endpoint management solutions as well.
Excellent. Now, you have enjoyed quite a diverse technology background with both industry leaders and startups, but what are the biggest challenges that you've seen in your career?
Yeah, so like you said, I've been doing product management and development for, I guess, a little over 20 years. So, some of the biggest things that I've seen, first is, when I first started, everything was on-premise, and then everything kind of moved more towards the cloud, initially as kind of a hosted solution, but then also kind of into those cloud-based services via like an Amazon or AWS and Azure. And in doing so, from a product perspective, you have to think about how you structure those, and it's very different than kind of building out kind of the on-premise software solutions. The other thing, I've had the opportunity to work in a number of industries, starting with enterprise software. I've even moved into things as kind of the markets have evolved into digital marketing, as well as even cloud data and analytics. But what I'm really excited about right now is kind of moving into this security industry, where I feel like a large number of companies are beginning to take that very seriously and starting to look for solutions that will make it easy for them to implement kind of a secure set of services across the board.
And they really are. And that's one of the reasons I'm excited to get you on here, because here in 2019, I recently read, I think it's new research on the current state of challenges around managing identity. And that's something that we don't think about enough. I think more and more businesses are waking up to that fact. But for people that are hearing about it as a concept for the first time, can you share some of the revealing aspects of the report and why business leaders need to take note of some of the results in there?
Yeah, sure. So we just recently published a new report. I'll probably throw out some statistics here because there were some interesting findings that we had. First of all, one thing that's clear is there's a number of SMBs that need to upgrade their identity capabilities, and it's top of mind for them. 98% of respondents see room for improvement in the general security behavior of their employees, which is obviously a huge number. I'm not sure what those 2% were thinking necessarily, but 75% are focused on the security of their business data. This is a top priority as people are have more and more data being, whether it be stored in the cloud or even just in their own infrastructure. Making sure that data is secure is very important, right? And then 65% cited upgrading identity access management as a primary objective over the next year. Yet only 5%, or less than 5%, believe their organization operates in a very secure manner. So, the bottom line is all this data is telling us that organizations are absolutely not where they need to be in terms of their identity access management programs, and they know that they need to improve along the way.
Wow, some staggering results in there. Did any of it surprise you?
We knew that it was an underserved market right now, but I think for us, as and we'll talk more about this hopefully in the interview, but we want to make these a comprehensive set of solutions that's going to be simple and easy to use, but very secure. So we feel like we're in the right spot, and we're excited to kind of help tackle that part of the market.
And I'm from an IT background originally, and I think that every IT professional will always want to see more improvements, especially around security. But can you tell me more about why having a comprehensive identity solution can balance the control IT needs, but equally with the experience users expect?
Yeah, so one of the things that we see users, I'm a user, you're a user, but people want something that's simple and it's easy to use. They want to just be able to access their data and their systems quickly, right? But where IT kind of has to balance that is figuring out, okay, well, how do we implement a set of solutions that are easy for those users to use and less intrusive as possible so they can get to their information, right? And so we believe that leveraging kind of an adaptive authentication alongside a whole holistic solution made up of enterprise password management and single sign-on, IT can then secure all of their passwords, they can strengthen their authentication, and they can simplify that access for the employees.
And the average organisation has at least 4 IT security objectives coming in the next year, including securing data, securing new technologies that they've adopted, and also reducing risk. But can you tell me more about how businesses are all juggling these competing priorities?
Yeah, so figuring out one of the first things we see is figuring out where to start is hard. And a lot of companies don't know, especially SMBs, don't necessarily know where to start. We traditionally, or where we've seen in the past, are a lot of companies look towards an enterprise password management solution first. That's kind of their first step, being able to kind of secure passwords, share passwords within organizations, and kind of managing that onboarding and offboarding process to make sure that you have a secure set of passwords in place, right? as people evolve and they start looking at, beyond password management, SSO is another thing that people are looking at. And we know that only about 50% of web applications and other applications allow for easy to use out-of-the-box support for SSO. And so that's where combining SSO and password management together provides a more comprehensive solution for gaining access to those systems, but then securing them as well, right? And then as we kind of move beyond that, we see that MFA, or multi-factor authentication, becomes a very important security practice that people look at. And what we've seen is 59% of IT professionals agree that strengthening their user authentication with MFA technology is critical, but not everyone is implementing this right now. We do see some folks that implement kind of the two-factor authentication, but really where MFA can go one step further, right, and requires two or more factors of authentication. That's something that like a password or a passphrase, or something that you have, like a phone or an SMS code, and then something that you are, like a fingerprint. And that's where we kind of feel like the market's moving, is really towards this kind of more biometrics, adaptive authentication.
And like you said, there are a lot of companies doing nothing about this at the moment, and they've got a long list of priorities, and maybe managing identities is not high enough on that list at the moment. But doing nothing is possibly the worst thing that any business leader could do. But just to hammer home that point, what are the risks of not managing identity?
Well, the risks of not managing identity are prominent across all small and medium-sized businesses. That's from everything from losing employee data to cloud server exposure, or just even struggling with the access controls that people are having or your employees are having. Overall, we see a large number of companies kind of operating under poor security behavior, and they know this, right? And so they're looking for solutions that are kind of simple to implement and figure out, what are some things they can do in the right direction. That goes back to the kind of previous point. A lot of people start with enterprise password management first, and they kind of layer in the SSO and the MFA pieces later.
And like I said a few moments ago, I do have a background in IT, and I've got first-hand experience of business departments and boardrooms not listening to IT, but typically IT have to pick up all the pieces after any disaster. But saying I told you so just isn't going to cut it, is it? So as a result, are you finding that IT are much more motivated to prioritise security and invest in identity because they've seen the consequence of failing to do so?
We are, because of the potential risks that we've kind of just talked about. We had according to a Verizon 2019 data breach investigation, 43% of businesses fall victim to data breaches, which is kind of staggering if you think about it. And 60% of those go out of the business within 6 months of experiencing a cyber attack. That's huge. So if you think if you're a small, and if you think you're an SMB, and you aren't implementing the right set of security risks, and the results are that you go out of business, it's even more important for people and these smaller companies to kind of secure their data and their access, right? Which is why we believe having kind of a comprehensive, easy to use, simple identity access management solution is important.
And we have focused on the problem somewhat. So a question I've got to ask is, how is LastPass Identity providing simple control and that unified visibility across every access point without the hassle of managing multiple solutions? And are there any use cases that you can share to help listeners understand how it would work in their own environment? Yeah,
so one of the things we've been focusing on is creating this whole unified solution, which brings in enterprise password management, SSO, and MFA together into kind of one single dashboard. But really the driving principle that we're focusing on from a product perspective is how do we make this simple to implement for their employees and also for the IT professionals, right? And so, as an example, we have this one unified dashboard that brings in SSO and your passwords together to be able to kind of have that launch pad for users to kind of come in and log securely into their solutions. We also have things for the IT professionals when they're setting things up. We have one-click setup, which allows you to integrate in with Office 365 and set up that SSO very easily. One of the big challenges we've seen is as IT professionals, especially in small businesses where they don't have the breadth of IT employees to help them implement these things, being able to set up SSO with one click or in a very easy fashion is important. And we've focused quite a bit on making sure we can simplify that process down for people.
And it seems that your clients, your customers, your businesses, and indeed your own business, all suffering or struggling with the same challenges and the opportunities. So what have you found to be the most challenging task in your business? And equally, what excites you about the opportunities ahead and the role of technology?
Well, up until about a few weeks ago, we were solely focused on enterprise password management. LastPass is obviously a leading solution in that area, and oftentimes we see companies who even have already bought other SSO solutions augment their SSO solutions with our LastPass Enterprise Management solution, right? So we know that is, it's still a growing industry and it's great, but what we felt like we needed to do was, look, it's not just about passwords, it's about linking in SSO and bringing that kind of adaptive authentication through MFA. So what we're excited about is we just launched this new, comprehensive suite of enterprise password management, SSO, and MFA, and we believe it's going to make it really easy for SMBs to kind of implement all three together. And we're excited about that opportunity in the market because, as we've talked about from the research, it's very underserved right now.
So if anybody listening wants to find out more information about LastPass or the kind of work that you're doing and your blog, etc., can you just point them in the direction of your website details and also the best way of contacting a member of your team if they are left with any additional questions?
Yeah, sure. So we have a wealth of information on LastPass.com. Please, you can visit that website. That includes free trials to set up, a whole host of information and white papers and research. You referenced that research paper that we were just talking about. That's there for people to take a look at. And then we are always staying in the loop on kind of the traditional social media channels. We have a blog. We also have kind of at LastPass on Twitter. So we encourage people to kind of follow us there.
Fantastic. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on today. I think every business is juggling a number of security responsibilities, but improving identity capabilities, I think that's something that most people listening, including myself, could improve on. So a big thank you for coming on and sharing that with me today. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Neil, for the opportunity.
Wow, we covered a lot there, didn't we? And it's not until you group it all together and start talking about things like multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, enterprise password management, privileged access management, lifecycle management, that you realise how we all need complete security and visibility into every user and access point. But it also has to be user-friendly. This is the age of digital experiences. We're supposed to be making things more pleasurable and easier to use, not more difficult. Such a hard balance to find. And that's why I want to invite you to join in the conversation and for you to share your experiences and your insights around everything that we've talked about today. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. And you can also find out how to DM me on your favourite social channel of choice by simply going to my website, techblogwriter.co.uk, scroll to the bottom, and you should find all the usual icons for the social channels. So finally, before I go, a big thank you to everyone listening as always. I know there's quite a commitment tuning into a daily tech podcast, but I'm going to pace myself as it is only Monday and I'll return tomorrow with another great guest. So thanks for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.